Good morning you guys and welcome to the Prime Vanguard channel, and today I'll be featuring to you my Scharharot Vampir deck profile for the December 2020 meta. So this deck is still really good. I know that over the while it has grown out of the meta as we are going to be entering the next set coming out, which is set 12. But Scharharot Vampir, especially if you focus around different ways and how you want to play the deck, and especially the variation of the deck that I play, is still extremely strong. Nothing about this deck has gotten weaker or is bad essentially. It's just that all the other decks got stronger, and then with the introduction of the ban list and a lot of unrestrictions that happened, a lot of the slower decks are now faster. So essentially this deck just is not as fast as the others, and which is why you're not probably seeing it as much. But it's still very powerful. You get multiple attacks, you get strong multiple attacks, and the deck has a lot of arrays of effects that essentially can help you get out of any situation you need to. So without further ado, let's begin. Alright you guys, so to start off we play 4 copies of Scharharot Vampir, the star of the deck. Really amazing card. This card is so good, so good. For those of you guys that are unaware of what he does, he has 2 abilities which are both active on Vanguard. His first one is at the beginning of the battle step. He gets all of your front row units get 1000 power per every card in your soul. And then his second ability is when it attacks, you get to counterblast 1 and stand one of your rear guard units. If you have 13 or more cards in the soul, you get to stand 2 units. So this card is pretty simple. It's not really anything like unique or special. It essentially gives you power for the amount of cards you stack in the soul to your front row, and then lets you attack multiple times. The way that this deck is built, getting to 13 soul is not an issue. You should usually get to 13 soul before you even get to grade 3, or at least when you're on turn grade 3 with all the effects that you have. Or we have some battle abilities that let us soul charge during the battle phase to help us get to 13 cards in soul. So with the way the deck is built, getting to that soul point isn't really hard to do. Therefore, you're always getting the 5 attacks in a turn to maximize the number of attacks you can get in a turn with this card. So therefore, everything that we do in the deck is just making sure that this happens, making it really simple to do. Overall, it's still a really powerful card to have. Then we play 4 copies of Number of Terror. Obviously a staple in every Scharharot Vampir deck, or I would honestly say in every Dark Irregular deck for the amount of resources that it offers you, both offensive and defensive. For those of you guys that do not know what this one does either, it is on the rear guard circle or the guardian circle. When it's placed, if your soul has 10 or more cards in it, he gets 10,000 power and shield. And then when it attacks a Vanguard, if your soul has 10 or more cards in it, you get to soul charge one of your rear guard units and draw 2 cards. So this is another one of the units that I was talking about that lets us soul charge during the battle phase. And in combination with Scharharot Vampir, the main combo with this is that attacking multiple times with this card on top of Twin Drive will essentially let you draw 6 cards in a turn. You'll get 4 off of this and then 2 cards from your Twin Drive, therefore allowing you to maximize your hand out of any situation. Because Dark Irregulars, the way the deck is built, still really doesn't care about its rear guards, and getting those extra rear guards for more soul and pieces that you can use later to call to the board to maximize your attacks is still really helpful as well. Realistically, you're just focused on your front row and putting the strongest units in the front row, or at least the most useful ones, so that you can maximize the full effect of Scharharot Vampir when your rear guards restand. So Number of Terror, to give us the multiple draw with the high powered attack since he gets 10,000 on his own, is obviously amazing to have, and it's going to be really tough for your opponent to stop him. For my last grade 3, I played 2 copies of the Abominable One Giladides. So this was a card that I've been off and on about, but I actually really like it. I was thinking about playing it in Dontarium, but it works way better in this deck than I thought it would. For those of you guys that do not know what Giladides does, he has 2 abilities that are both active on Vanguard and rear guard circle. His first one is when he's placed, you get to counterblast 1 and call a grade 2 or less card from your soul to the rear guard circle. And then the second one is when it attacks a Vanguard, if you have 10 or more cards in soul, you retire one of your opponent's rear guards. So obviously the same logic that we're going to apply with Number of Terror, we're going to apply for this card. This is the card that helps us build up our board with any of our grade 2s or 1 units, and then we can call those out and combo with them to get either more soul or just more board presence. But the same idea that I was talking about in Number of Terror is the fact that because this unit alone can attack at least 1 to 2 times, you're essentially getting 2 retires a turn if you keep this card on the board with Scharharot Vampir, which is really strong in my opinion, because board control is actually really important right now in Vanguard, especially considering the fact that a lot of decks have certain key pieces on their board that they want to keep because they either continuously enable a strategy or they're going to help them set up for next turn. So being able to just snipe those units off the board right away is really helpful. That and the fact that we don't have to waste our rearguard attacks on other rearguard units because we have cards like this that allow us to essentially get rid of our opponent's board presence. So Gila Dides is definitely a card that I'm really excited to be playing about. It's a newer addition to the deck, but overall I'm really happy with it so far. Moving on to grade 2s, I play 2 copies of Werewolf Sieger. So Werewolf Sieger is the main grade 2 that you want to ride in this deck besides our next one. His ability is during your turn, if you have 5 or more cards in soul, he gets 5,000 power, and then when he attacks while in the Vanguard circle, you get to soul charge too. So this is just another card that helps us soul charge for free essentially, and the 5,000 power is, you know, helpful as well. Realistically, you want to get over certain numbers so that you can hit those, you know, guarding points, and the fact that he becomes 14 on top of the 13 minimum that you'll get from Scharharot Vampir makes him strong enough to stop 15Ks from other Protect and Excel decks. The soul charge on 2 for the Vanguard circle works out really well too, simply because the soul charge 2 is free, so you don't have to worry about spending any resources to do that, which is why you mainly want to ride this card if for your second choice of riding. But we still have plenty of cards in the deck that are still a really good first ride, as all of our grade 2s are, but this is the one that I prefer to see simply because it's free. For our next grade 2, I play 4 copies of Demonted Executioner. So Demonted Executioner has 2 abilities. His first one is on the Vanguard circle. When it attacks a grade 2 or greater unit, this unit gets 5,000 power, and then when it's placed on Vanguard or Rearguard circle, when it attacks, no, my bad, I'm sorry. When it's placed on Vanguard Rearguard circle, when it's placed, you counterblast 1, soul charge 3. If you soul charge a trigger unit, you get to draw a card. So this card is really good as well. It's your best first grade 2 ride target besides Werewolf Sieger if you have the damage available to do it. Being able to soul charge 3 and draw a card is helpful as well, since this is, you know, it's considered a reckless soul charge simply because you can't control it and you can't dictate what cards go into your soul. So you might have a higher chance of soul charging a trigger in that case, or if you're already thinking out your deck doing a lot of early soul charging, your chances of just seeing a trigger more is just more realistic. And going into this card after going into Yellow Bolt essentially gives you a 2-card draw if you get a trigger unit on both the Yellow Bolt and this card, which essentially boosts your hand even more for a more aggressive turn. So Demonic Executioner is definitely a staple in the Scharharot Vampir deck. As far as the ratio goes and what you want to play, that's completely up to you. I just play max copies of this card because I feel like this deck is very straightforward with its strategy. So playing a card that maximizes the number of soul charges I can get with each individual card is important to me. So I feel like 4 copies of Demon's Executioner is enough for the deck. For my last grade 2, I played 4 copies of Emblem Master. So Emblem Master is a staple in every Dark Irregular deck. I don't care which one you're playing, whether you're playing Brufus, No Life King, Dontarian. I even said in my Dontarian video that I feel like this card is a staple. But for those of you guys that don't know what he does, he has the Rear Guard and Guardian Circle ability, which is if your soul has 7 or more cards, this card gets 5,000 power and 5,000 shield permanently, as long as you have 7 more cards in your soul, because I want to note that it is a continuous ability. So this is always a 14k rear guard with a 10k shield. But we're really just care about his second effect, which is when he's placed on the Vanguard or rear guard circle, you choose one of your units and you counterblast and search out for 3 copies of that unit and move it into the soul. So this is just another card that helps us combine with our variant Killer Tail to obviously set that play up to get consistent soul charging and counter charging. This card's also good on the first turn ride as well. Not as much, he's still good, you just end up choosing 3 copies of him, which does hurt if you don't have the variance Killer Tail combo set up. You can also just choose to only pick 2 if you want, but because we play Gila Dides, we can just always know that we can call our Emblem Masters back out to the board and then go ahead and do that with our variance Killer Tail. That is an expensive play because that will be 2 counterblast, but because your Killer Tail will make up for 1 of them, it's not that bad. Since you're going to have that extra counterblast in order to be able to activate your Scharharot Vampir turn, then that's just all that really matters. But essentially Emblem Master is just another card that helps enable more combo plays. Moving on to our grade 1s, I play 1 copy of Alluring Succubus. So because we have a card like the Abominable Vanguard in the deck, playing one copy of Alluring Succubus isn't that bad at all. This card essentially lets us counterblast 1, move her to the soul, and look at the top 7, add a grade 3 to hand, add a grade 3 to soul. And this card is just another card that helps us with soul charging. It moves itself right back into the soul if you call it out Giladides, but this is just another card to help us search out for our key grade 3 pieces, as our grade 3s are the ones that really get our deck going when it comes to our offensive strategies. Everything else in the deck is just to help us set up to that 13 card soul for Scharharot Vampir, so calling this card back out really isn't that bad. But overall, she's just another card to help us fetch our pieces. For my next grade 1, I play 4 copies of Varian's Killer Tail. So Varian's Killer Tail, another staple in Dark Irregular right now. This is your best counter charging and soul charging consistent engine as long as she stays in the board. For those of you guys that do not know what she does, she has the ability where on the rear guard circle, if you have 3 copies of her into the soul, you may rest her, place a card either from your drop zone or damage zone, move it into the soul, and if you chose a card from your damage zone, you get to counter charge. So this card really just is your main target for Emblem Master. You'll pick her on the board, move 3 into the soul, then use her effect, get into the soul charge and counter charge. So that's 4 soul charges in 1 turn with only 2 cards. And yeah, that's 4 soul charges in a turn with only 2 cards. The additional counter charging is helpful as well because you essentially can pick the card that you put in the damage zone, her effect, flip it over, and you'll always have 1 phase of card in the damage zone. Her being 6k really isn't that big a deal because she's the best counter charging card that DI has. So playing 4 of her is just important to do. Next up, we play 4 copies of Succubus of Pure Love. I feel like this is a Scharharot Vampir deck and we have to play his girlfriend or his wife or whatever they call her in the lore. But Succubus of Pure Love is simply the grade 3 searcher for Dark Irregulars. This is your other second first turn ride target other than Yellow Bolt. This card will essentially help us get to our grade 3 and fetch out our grade 3 pieces so that we always have them for the turn in case you don't get our Alluring Succubus, but that's really all she's here for. The additional 5,000 power is helpful as well, but we really just care about searching out our pieces and having something we can do on our first turn ride. And I'm sorry about that noise, you guys. I'm filming this video at like 6 o'clock in the morning and I have to go to work at 8, so that was just my alarm telling me to wake up. But anyways, for our last grade 1, we play 4 copies of Yellow Bolt. Undoubtedly the best ride target for any Dark Irregulars deck, just another card that is a staple in DI. This card is 2 effects, which is the rear guard one, which is when it attacks a grade 2 or greater unit, you soul charge and give this card 5,000 power. His on ride ability is when he's ridden upon, you get to soul charge 2, and if you soul charge a trigger, you get to draw a card. So essentially this card helps us get another free soul charging, and then whether you go into Werewolf, Emblem, or Demonted, essentially you're always getting more than at least 3 cards soul charge to a turn, so you really want to be able to ride this card. It's the best way to get free soul charging out of anything. Not seeing this card in your first turn ride hurts, but then you can just call it out on grade 2 turn if you're going second and go ahead and get some early soul, or pick this card to attack multiple times to reach that soul charging limit for your Scharharot Vampir. So this is another card that helps us soul charge during the battle phase. That's important to note. But overall, this is just the best grade 1 ride target that Scharharot Vampir has, or Dark Irregulars has in general, so you definitely want to max out 4 copies of this card. And now for our triggers. So my trigger lineup is pretty straightforward, I would say, for Scharharot Vampir deck. I really wanted to go as aggressive as possible, so I'm playing 4 copies of Alice in Nightmareland for my heal trigger. I'm playing 2 of the draw trigger Sentinel, March Rabbit of Nightmareland. I'm only playing 2 of this simply because I think that since I have multiple attacking in this deck, criticals is the way to go because we get high power. So with showing only 2 of this, I think you guys know what card is coming next. Then I play 2 copies of One-Eyed Succubus. So like I was saying before, this deck has 5 attacks in a turn, and then adding the criticals onto the rear guards that are going to be attacking with high power is very important. And this deck draws so many cards already, and you have a lot of searching with cards like Pure Love, Executioner. This deck has no problem drawing cards, and the fact that we are a protect deck means that we're always going to get a protect 1 to our hand. If you really want to go balls to the walls, you can go ahead and throw a protect 2 on the board. It doesn't hurt the strategy or affect the strategy any differently in my opinion, but playing more crits is definitely the way to go in a deck that can get attacks over 33k in a turn every single turn after 13 cards in the soul. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and just show the 10 crits that I play. Then I play 4 copies of Werluchus Grefiter, 4 copies of Dark Knight of Nightmareland, and then for my last grade 0, which is my starter, the Devil in Shadow. So I'm playing Devil in Shadow in this deck only because I forgot to buy the vampire one, but because I'm playing Scharharot Vampir, I'm definitely gonna get the vampire one. This one I feel like just looks cooler in Dantarian. Alright you guys, well thank you so much for watching. This was my Scharharot Vampir deck for the December meta of 2020. Please let me know if there's any changes I can make to the deck in the comment section below. I'm very comfortable with this build. This is a build that I've been playing since the deck has came out. Well, it's not the build I've been playing since the deck came out, but this is the final variation of the deck I've been playing since the introduction of the newest set. I feel like with the introduction of Nova Grapplers and other decks that, you know, rely on their board to pretty much do everything, playing Giladides and playing other key cards that essentially help us get to our strategy as fast as possible is the main goal behind this deck. I was really just focusing on speed, because Scharharot Vampir, the one thing that makes this deck fall apart, like I was saying before, is speed, because there's so many decks that can do so many crazy things on grade 2 now, especially the introduction of other Excel clans and the support that they got, that I just felt like getting this deck to do its strategy as fast as possible while focusing on recovery, which is where its main weakness was what I was really going for. So, but that's it for the deck. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe to my channel. I have plenty more content coming out soon. Also, if your friend's thinking about playing Scharharot Vampir or thinking about building the deck, please don't forget to share this video with them. Definitely helps the channel out a lot, and so forth and so on. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I have plenty more stuff coming out. The Prime Vanguard channel is done for today.